All right. Wow, no, it doesn't. Global migration. Oh, that was cool. Right behind the post. See that? Yeah.
That was fancy.
All right. Oh, wait, you missed it. How did you get it? Yeah, behind the post. It's pretty cool. All right. It's a little thing. All right.
That girl's giving the stank.
Push factors for global migration. I'm telling you, if you should just take AP Hug next year and get an A. It's crazy how much that class is in this. I'm going to lobby to teach them together. Awesome. Year of AP. It would explode. All right. Push factors are just that. They are situations, factors, things that push you out of where you are. They're factors that make you say, I think we should move. Things like anyway, 1750. So for in a 150-year period, there were lots of things going on in other parts of the world, and we have been discussing all those other parts of the world, most of the other parts of the world, that might lead a person to consider relocating. I mean, just out of curiosity, this number changes every year. How many of you were born here? Show of hands. Raleigh.
Oh.
Not America, Raleigh. Born in Raleigh. Okay, that's the most hands I've ever had.
So good.
Okay, my whole family is from here.
Pardon?
From like 1790 though, so
All
I
right.
just happen to be born not here.
Okay. So there are lots of reasons that people move to Raleigh and then anyway, there's lots of reasons people move anyway. Most common push factors: not enough jobs, inadequate conditions, things like desertification, famine, or drought. Political fear: you fear for your life because you are part of a certain group who is targeted by your home country. Slavery, forced labor, poor medical care, loss of health. Natural disasters can be a push factor. Death threats, desire for more political or religious freedom. Believe it or not, that is a push factor. Conversely, the fact that in America you can vote if you're a woman is a pull factor. So they can occupy both spaces. What else? Landlord-tenant issues, poor housing, discrimination, poor chances of marrying, and then finally, war. Okay. That's a lot of factors. Please not write all those down. They're on a slide. You can go back and get them at any time. And not only that, you are smart people, and common sense is authorized. Think of all the reasons that you would no longer want to stay in this situation. And those reasons transcend ethnicity, transcend borders. All human beings want their condition to be better. The agrarian industrial revolution led to increased population and longer lifespans, creating population pressure. Population pressure is what it sounds. The increase of people puts pressure on resources. Scarcity becomes a thing, and then your overall quality of life becomes a thing. So I don't think this is the all right. I need a okay. For another month. India, China, and Japan all saw surplus populations that never leave. Okay, for less populated countries. What would constitute people here, people there? A surplus. What does it mean by surplus population?
More.
Well, I know what surplus means, Mr. Hood, but
Can't handle
what can't handle?
it.
Yeah, the resources can't handle it. Correct. The resources can't handle it. It's beyond what we can produce without there having to be restrictions or rationing or things of that sort. All right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen anybody do that. Okay. It's okay. Don't apologize. Steamship transportation across oceans was cheap enough for almost everybody but the absolute poorest. Unless, of course, you want to hand the poker and won some tickets. And then you got to go with your Irish buddy.
Oh. And then- Yeah.
And then die because, she wouldn't slide over on a piece of wood.
They proved in Mythbusters it was possible to do it too.
What?
Like for both of them, because if she took off her life jacket and like put it like under the board, like they both could have floated on.
Yeah, I know. But no,
We had to kill him.
gotta be all chivalrous.
How did you do that?
Slide over. All right. It's 4 hours of my life I'll never get back. Oh, it only felt longer. It's long. It's heck of long. It's awful. It's just, I mean, why? I know how to do watch it. All right. Political unrest in Europe, the Napoleonic Wars, revolution in the 1830s, and 1848. There's that year again. We're also push factors. Especially like if you lost, or if your life changed because of the outcome of the revolution, it might not be a bad idea to skedaddle. That's Germany. I don't think that flag's accurate. That's okay. Could be Belgium. Another push factor was religious persecution. A lot of the anti-Jewish pogroms in Russia. A pogrom was just a program of going after Jews. Pogrom. Speaking of persecuting people, our current president is about to declare what the Turks did to the not Kurds, Armenians as genocide. He's calling them out. What the Turks did to the Armenians. This was This was when Turkey was becoming a country. Yesterday's living the gunpowder lecture from yesterday.
Oh, what did they do to Armenians?
They defended themselves against them. That's what they said. They moved them out and killed millions of them so they can get the good land. It's always about the good land. No, they said it was something else.
No, and no other powers.
Well, you have to remember that genocide as a thing doesn't exist until after World War II.
So no one got back to that.
I kind of wonder if there's like I don't think you can grandfather.
Like, does anything happen now?
I don't know. We'll find out. That's just never ever been mentioned. What
Was that the
Is Turkey technically a democracy? But like it's not really. Is it one of those situations?
It's closer than a lot of other places in that part of the world. Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope it does. Or we're host. No, if it doesn't have a statute of limitations, then we can be held responsible for what it is to Native Americans. Like how far back do you want to go? Yeah. Part of me, morally, it shouldn't. All right. And this just shows you Russia, White Russia. I don't know why it's called that. A pale is a region of settlement. It's a political term. The part of Ireland around Dublin was called the Pale as well. Sorry. We don't need to draw that map. It's on the slide. Famine forced people to leave homelands, especially in East and South Asia, which are different than Southeast Asia. Geography's funny that one.
Why are you taking pictures of that kid? I like that at the bottom. I feel where the text is coming from.
They're just, I don't know. They're just trying to get the word out. Whoops. In 1845, the Irish potato famine saw up to 2 million Irish starve and another 2 million migrate to the United States, or migrate mostly to the U.S. There were multiple potato famines in Ireland. There were multiple crop failures in a 12-year period. And again, England had this thing in place called the Corn Laws, which meant all the crops had to go to England first. So when this was going on in Ireland, England still took the corn. The thing about the potato normally is it stores for long periods of time. It'll grow almost anywhere. It grows multi-seasonally.
Until there's no more.
Yeah, until there's a blight on it, so there's a disease on it. Yeah. But and part of that can be, well, it's a non-issue now because we can, well, pesticides, and we can genetically create seeds that are disease-proof until the disease catches up. I mean, yeah, it's a biological argument. Most people move for economic opportunities, seeking jobs elsewhere. This is true. That's why I'm no longer in Connecticut. My mom wanted that and family, the whole chain migration thing. All right. Again, most of this is common sense. It shouldn't take too long. Pull factors. What over there? Think about it. One of the first pull factors you'll have to deal with is college. Is it worth it to go to Eugene, Oregon, and go to school? Is it worth it? I mean, that's, is it worth it to go to Connecticut, or New York, or Florida? No, it's never worth it to go to Florida. Unless you're going to Orlando. Otherwise, there's no reason to go to Florida.
You sound just like my dad.
Huh?
You sound just like that.
I just don't understand. I'm sure if you have family there, build your family. But, all right.
I like fishing.
So you can fish off the coast of anywhere.
I mean.
Yeah.
Except for Massachusetts, so you have to serve.
If I'm going fishing in the ocean, I'm not standing on the beach or a pier. Give me a boat.
There's a bug on the whiteboard behind you. On the tape.
There's a bug.
Yeah, see that? Yeah.
The most common pull factors: jobs, better living conditions, all the things that push you out are going to pull you over. That's fine. If it had been a grenade. Religious freedom, enjoyment. The weather. Lots of Northerners that have enough of the weather down here, they come. Not only that, but they can sell their house in New Jersey and pay cash for a house down here. Better medical care, attractive climate, security, family links, there's chain migration, industry, will be the same thing as jobs opportunity, and better chances of marrying. There you go. If you're in a country that's, skewed one sex over the other, it'd be difficult to find a mate. Hi, China. Ladies, in China and Japan, you can make money being a fake girlfriend. No. Like,
Sorry, I missed my opportunity.
you did miss your opportunity. I'm so proud of you for not taking it. Because men in Japan and China get pestered so often by their families, particularly their mothers, about getting married or who you're dating, you can actually just go to events as their girlfriend just so their parents get off their back. Like, it's literally, you're just there to help. All right.
There any place that has a female.
There are no other conditions. It's just you're going there as a placeholder. Just so mom and dad don't ask questions.
You just never played the show?
Yeah. All right. Yes, Ben.
I saw a YouTube video about like a marriage fair in China.
Yep.
Where, like all the guys planted their resumes.
Yep. And yes. That's a true story. All right. Migrants moved to cities during the Industrial Revolution. Why would they move to cities? Why else?
Wild.
The first people would move there for jobs. Why would the successful people move there?
Yeah.
Because the first people were there. Up until recently, and by recently I mean like the last 5-10 years, most illegal immigrants in this country were European. But because they look like everybody else in America, no one stopped to ask. As long as they don't open their mouth, they look like us. But most illegal immigrants are here on expired visas. They get here legally, and they're like, oops, I forget. It's so much nicer here. All right, we'll put the piano right there.
Great.
The United States, Canada, Russia, and many Latin American countries encouraged immigration with generous land policies. Look at the irony here. Yes, come to America. We have all this land. Huh?
That's what I was supposed to say, 'cause, like, isn't that a problem now?
Well, no, there's still more. There's still. We have plenty of land. So what?
I really want to buy an entire mountain somewhere. And I'm gonna call it Mountain Done.
Mountain Done.
Where are you going, dude? I'm done. That would be your T-shirt. Done. All right, we're all done. Okay.
Well, if
I mean,
you do-
come on. If you buy, can't build. You're gonna find the money to buy one. All right. In 1862, with the Homestead Act, the United States offered 160 acres of farmland in the Great Plains for free, which you had to live there for 5 years. So then, yes. They're.
Dirt and brick, same thing, right?
I mean, yeah, it's just compressed sod,
What's that roof though?
thatch.
Like straw?
Yeah, I guess. It's an organic house. Well, yeah. If anybody's house catches on fire, they're, potentially done for. All right. And I don't know what they're hunting, but they're huge.
That's
That-
bigger than that girl.
Those racks are huge. Yes.
There's places, there's certain towns in Italy that are selling old homes for $1. If you are gonna like refurbish it, you have to put like $30,000 into it and rebuild the house. But they'll give it to you for $1.
Because Italy is one of those European countries that needs people.
Like Bulgaria.
Well, like Germany, like Russia, like Japan, like we will shortly. Germany needs people. Germany's been one of the most welcoming to immigrants because no one's having children.
Oh, really?
The more developed the country you are, the fewer children you have.
People are weird. and don't have kids.
Because women work. The more developed you are, women have more opportunities, which means they don't have to. Which means their only opportunity isn't, baby factory. So.
Or ladies that can do both. Like,
I'm gonna step out for a second, and all you couple done. All right. Mary's behind you,
Now it's just women in general.
and she is behind you too. I can watch what she says. All right. Women can't do two things at once. In Japan, yes.
The queen.
Yeah, why do you?
Oh,
Because she's not right.
All right. So, why immigrate to Kansas? Because it's the garden spot of the world, gentlemen. It's the garden spot of the world. Because it will grow anything that any other country will grow, and with less work.
Except for.
Gotta call cat. It's not gonna grow rice. It's not gonna grow bananas. It's not gonna grow sugar. Yeah, it is too late. They gotta stay there for 5 years. And I don't know what the penalty is if you leave. Also, there's also during this time period and shortly thereafter this time period when the land grant colleges appear too. It's when NC State's created, Clemson's created, when the federal government takes land and says put a college here. And they were all agricultural and technical schools. As slave systems were abolished, indentured labor, usually from East and South Asia, was used on the world's plantations. Remember, capitalism is about profit. Whether you're the individual or the country, you want to be the richest country. Mercantilism is a thing. Brazil was one of the last countries to let it go. Serfdom even ended before slavery. Way to go, America. The Vikings were ahead of us. Yeah.
It's indentured labor sharecropping.
7 years.
Indentured labor, yeah, it's contractual labor. Sharecroppers were legally free, but theoretically, because of the way the system was set up, they were never going to be able to leave because they always owed the landowner money. Because the landowner bought some of the crop, but then he had to buy more seeds from the landowner, and then for some reason the cost always went up of the value of the crop always went down, and they could never leave. Plus, if we're being honest about this, 1865, we're all slaves and we're all free. Okay. What do we know? We know slavery. We know how this works. It's almost like being institutionalized. Well, it is like being institutionalized, where all you know is what you've known your whole life. We're all probably not literate. We have no other appreciable skills. We don't know anybody up there, up north, probably, or even the next state over, so we can go live with them. So they were kind of stuck, and the former slave owners do that. Plus, one of the conditions, depending on where you live, was you got first dibs on hiring your former slaves. Yes.
Isn't that like the same thing with the serfs in Russia?
Yeah, where are you going to go?
Payment or anything?
Yeah.
And the Hengist.
No, not yet. And the only reason that there were blacks in school after the Civil War is because the army was down. We forced Reconstruction on the South. Now I will see. All right. Economic opportunities, especially in the Americas, drew millions from around the world. People sought a fresh start. Think of all the turmoil we discussed in the various places in Europe, primarily because this first wave of migration is Western European. The second part will be Southern European, Eastern European. The Pacific coast will eventually see people from Asia. Chinese have been coming over since the railroads, gold rush. America was known to foreigners as the land where you get rich. There's gold on the sidewalk. All you have to do is pick it up. Yeah.
So when it talks about America, is it talking about both South and North America?
Us.
Okay.
Yes, this is us. Yeah.
So when it says in the Americas.
And the Americas is the larger landmass. But when it's America singular,
So were there still a lot of economic opportunities in South America? Or just like it wasn't?
well, remember we were talking about it with. There was unrest. Bolivar tried to get stuff done. You had competing factions. You had still pretty much more agricultural than industrial in South America. I mean, there's land. If you're a farmer or a sheep herder going to Argentina, would be where to go. Like there would be, but it would be knowing enough about it to go there.
So it just depended on
Yep.
kind of like what you wanted.
Yeah, or who you knew. Like there's probably 3 generations of people here.
Okay, so it's like you know someone that's
Yep.
where you want to go.
Because if nothing else, you got a place to stay while you look for work.
Okay.
Canada would probably Canada was probably a bigger draw than Mexico and point south.
Okay.
All right, that's a good question. Migrants went to Australia, Alaska, Northwest Canada, and California. Look at that, looking for gold. Remember, we knew they found gold in Australia because the Aborigines. Bless you. Bless you, Lucas. Formal. All right.
Thank you, man.
Migrants sought lands free of persecution, desiring political participation, religious toleration. Remember, whenever you engage in imperialism, there are they're the imperialists and they're the imperialees. I don't know, those who feel the effect of the empire. And although we learned that when possible, they let local people rule, even within local communities, there are groups that are not seen equal. So an opportunity for a voice is a nice draw. That's a nice pull. What are you trying to find?
Oh, just
They came color.
No. It's just a roof line. No, I want the ones that change color on both boards. I have to go buy that. All right. Those aren't cheap. Those are stupid expensive. All right. Many from Southern Europe and Germany migrated to the Americas. There's the Americas, especially the U.S. And North Africans migrate to Europe because one of the rules in migration is you're going to go to the closest possible place. Now, the Americas is not the closest possible place to Western Europeans, but they have the means. They have the resources to hop on a boat and go. If you're a refugee, all you want to do, and I'm not saying these people are refugees, but if you're in a refugee situation, all you want to do is leave your situation. So the next closest place that isn't your situation is where you're going to go. And then you would do the whole step migration, then you would eventually get to a better place. But when you look at where the most refugees are in the world, typically they're right outside the area with the problem. And typically they're places that can really handle their own population from a resource perspective. Look at you, Africa. Fun fact, North Africans to Europe remains the most active migration of humans in the world today. Did not know that. Probably because of imperialism. If you're Moroccan, you're kind of French. If you're Senegalese, you're kind of French. Someone had a question? Was going to say something? I heard a voice. See, now you'll have to take a lot. All right. Pay attention. Imperialism and the labor force. All right. Let me back up. We'll be fast. I apologize. What?
It's Earth Day today.
No, that was.
It's like it's Earth Day.
They didn't say 22nd.
Or to Google it.
Ah, I guess I was celebrating the unofficial one. Yes, Ben.
According to the United Nations in 2019, the US, Germany, and Saudi Arabia had the largest number of immigrants.
Saudi Arabia makes sense because people are leaving that region. Germany makes sense because they were letting them in, and they were. And there are people there, and America makes sense because, you know, south of us. Okay, and, you know, but wait, 2019? Yeah. But we had a wall.
A wall.
Okay, sorry. A great wall. A giant wall. He lied to us. All right. In 1800s, the rise of imperialism, colonization, and the global capitalist economy dramatically changed worldwide migration patterns because, I mean, for both sides, for a push and a pull factor. If you're the victim of imperialism, you might want to leave. If your economic opportunities are better somewhere else, that's kind of a positive thing. You might want to leave. If you're being colonized, you may not have a choice but to leave. Maybe forced off your land. So yes, the 19th century, the 1800s, saw a huge shift in migratory patterns of human beings. Who went where, why they went. Typically, younger people migrate. Typically, people without large families migrate. Typically, mothers migrate. Oh my gosh, you would ace that class. New global economy relied on coerced and semi-coerced labor. Oh, convict labor. Okay. You know, like Shawshank Redemption. Indentured servants. Or a concept that came about in the 20th century, the idea of wage slavery, where you don't make enough money to actually leave your situation, where the very nature of your work environment and the conditions of your work environment keep you there, and they force you to keep working there, even though it's not good for you, because you can't pay enough to get out.
Like a sweatshop.
Kind of, sort of like Whitaker Mill. The road Whitaker Mill in Raleigh is named for a mill there. There was an old textile mill there called Whitaker Mill. And there were and all those little white houses that used to be there were all mill houses where the employees worked and lived. And you'd have the mill store, the mill hospital, and all those charges. If you couldn't afford it, you'd get credit or it'd come out of your check. So invariably, you wouldn't have enough money to pay it off, which meant you couldn't leave and work. So because of your wage structure, how much they paid you and everything else they did to make their money in the business sense, you were forced to stay there. Because if you didn't, you'd lose the house, your family would lose whatever they had, and someone would take your job that day. That's just an example. I don't know if Whitaker Mill did that. I just use that as an example of a mill town and things like that. 56 million Europeans migrated to other areas in search of work. British, Irish, German, Scandinavians all moved to the United States in the early 1800s. The Swedes are all up in Minnesota, don't you know? Wisconsin, that part of the world. Germans too, good Lutherans, good farmers, good hardworking people. Augustus, Anheuser-Busch were two Germans that came over and made beer in America. That's just Augustus and somebody, the two people, German and American. Hey, we do this. Yes.
So 56 million in the early 1800s.
All right.
That's a sixth of the population about right now. How do we have not more people?
War, death, and as you develop, you have fewer children, so your population growth slows down. We're having fewer children.
I was just saying that this is a.
No, that's a good question. I know. And we're about to have they also brought diseases. Just because they moved here doesn't mean they survived. To have children doesn't mean that they live to a ripe old age, and there's generations of these people's families here. 56 million, the odds are pretty good that most of them stuck, but you can't assume that. You can't assume some didn't go back. Like, there's a lot of information missing from this. Yeah.
I think you'll learn later on about the Great Revolution about like completely changed our population. So that's why it's so small. And they tend to think about slaves, but people.
That's not normal.
Yo.
What's the Great Revolution?
So, second to last unit, Navy Hub, join us. All right, Southern and Eastern Europeans migrate to the United States in the late 1800s. These are the immigrants that support industrial growth. Remember, like I said, 1850s, when the Irish are getting off the boats in New York City, the recruiters are right there, off the gangplank. You want to make this much money a month? Sign up, get your right. Go fight these other Americans. Like, there were so many foreigners fighting in the Civil War just because it was a picture. It wasn't their fight. All right. Europeans also moved to Latin America. They moved to Australia, New Zealand for herding and farming. Again, and South America too. Latin America for farming as well. Argentina raises a lot of cattle. Chile raises, llamas, alpacas. What's that? Cashmere is a goat, right? Yeah, cashmere is a goat. Probably the flexiest goat there is. All right. Some immigrants worked in other countries and returned home with enough savings to improve lives in their homeland. So there was that sort of that return migration kind of factor. I'm going to go work and then come back. If you work in America and send your money back home, that's called remittance. And there are some countries in the world where remittances is the biggest part of their GDP. Gross domestic product, the value of all the stuff you make in a year.
That's
The country.
what's the difference between like GDP and GDP per capita? Like, what's that?
Per capita is by person. So how much you produce. Every time you see per capita, it's per person. Many times worked in Argentina's factories, farms, and ranches and returned home to Italy with their savings. That's quite a commute. In the early 19th century, several Western European countries abolished the slave trade. That was mighty nice of them. This just shows you Denmark abolished it in 1792, Holland, and then you go England in 1807, France in 1815, Holland in 1815, then Portugal, ironically. Brazil wasn't until 1888, United States. This is the importation, not slavery itself.
Oh, okay.
Yes. After 1807, you could no longer offload a boat of slaves in the United States, which is what drove the price up. Economics is economics, which is also what made female slaves more valuable than male slaves from a purely capitalist sense. Because they're your slave makers. All right. But also, even in America in the 1800s, farming is getting better. Like farming is improving. I mean, there are some who argue slavery is going to die of natural causes anyway, as soon as John Deere and other tractors and reapers become prevalent because there's no need for that much labor. I don't know if they would have repurposed the labor, but the British, French, and Dutch used peasants from India as indentured servants after the slave trade ended. That's better. Now, if that got you full citizenship, is it worth it? I mean, you know, you have to, and you also have to take into account their situation, what life is like for them. And again, coolie was the bureaucratic term the British used to describe indentured servants, but it became a highly charged slur. Interesting. Interesting choice of words. Indians worked on sugar and rubber plantations in the Caribbean, East and South Africa, Fiji and Oceania. So Indian, people from the country India worked all over the world. It's also worth noting that if you look at enough pictures of people from India, there's a huge variance in skin tone and facial and physical structures and everything else. It's a big country. Indentured servants from Japan, Africa, the Pacific Islands, and Java worked on tropical plantations in the Americas, Africa, and Oceania. So we're just getting around it. You're going to pay them anything and not technically own them, therefore you can get around the whole slavery thing, but you're still not going to pay them enough where it hurts profit. And back then, I imagine it would take a lot to hurt profit. Although you were more susceptible to natural disasters and other calamities with technology back then. 5-7-year contracts, and often renewed them. They got free passage over, free food, free shelter in exchange for labor. So look, it's voluntary. They don't have to re-sign. But again, what are your options if you don't? Do they make you leave? I don't know. I don't know. And if I do sign, then I know what I have. If I do sign this contract, then I know what I have. If I don't sign this contract, I don't know. And again, I don't know the stipulations from country to country as to what happened to them. I would imagine that they couldn't stay. Yes.
Would kids sign these contracts too, or would kids do it like along with their parents?
They probably do it with their parents until they became of age. If I had to guess, yeah, that's a good question. And then that just shows you what a contract is. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is how many of these people do you think are living? I was kind of rhetorical, but thank you. That's okay. Indentured servants often treated badly. Some became permanent settlers, others returned home. So again, it just depended. All right. What did I do? Don't worry about that. British card. Okay. In 1800s, Britain routinely used convict laborers, criminals leased to private companies under a government contract, saying goodbye to their convict husbands. Typically, because some of that revenue would go back to the prison, and also because contract labor tended to be the lowest bid. They couldn't say no. And if you're, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know how to think like a convict. But I would imagine, depending on the job, getting out of the prison might not be bad. You know, and of course, me being not a convict and me being not from Britain in the 1800s and me looking at it through my 21st century privileged lens, they're learning a skill. That's probably one of the arguments, one of the justifications. In 1788, Australia established as a penal prison colony, 150,000 convicts, usually serving 7 to 10 years. So you had 7 to 10 years of convict contract labor to work on infrastructure for your new colony. Talk about keeping wages down. Yeah.
Were they freed after?
Once they're George, well, you serve your time, and yeah.
So they worked in Australia, or they were sent from Australia?
They were sent to Australia because Australia was the prisoner colony, and while they were there, they worked there.
Okay.
So they had if they wanted to, they didn't have to pay for it. Convicts working along other settlers in Australia. All right. Convict labor treated harshly, and most were never allowed. No, they're answering the question. Were never allowed to return home. There you go. From distant climes or widespread seas become, though not with much style or beat of drum. True patriots all, for be it understood, we left our country for our country's good. Prisoners also used in the United States, especially in the South, as laborers on plantations, coal mines, railroads, and other industries. Weren't they? Yeah, over on the Toronto, they were prisoners. Yeah, they were. Yeah. What's it based on? Oh, it's the opposite. It's the Odyssey. Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey.
I've heard of it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the Odyssey.
I don't know. What it's
The
about.
one, the Cyclops, the one-eyed man, the Cyclops. Yeah, it's based on the Odyssey. All right, just like Lion King based on Hamlet. 1896, Tennessee became one of the first southern states to ban the use of convict labor.
Don't they still do that today?
Well, like road crews? Like the people cleaning the highways? Which our mayor needs to get on the ball and clean our highways. They're filthy.
Yeah, actually.
Huh? Sometimes. If it's not an adopt a highway, like I would love to have a student adopt a highway program, but immigrant experiences. All right, so there's immigrant labor. Here's life as an immigrant. We're almost here. Migration produced a variety of consequences and reactions. Obviously, you're moving to a diverse society, and you're moving into an already established group. So if you came over not expecting a reaction, you were probably fed, misinformation, or you were overly naive. But it didn't matter. Because whatever it was making you move, either the pull or the push, made it worth it for most. Uncle Sam's lodging house, interesting. Obviously, you're going to have people who don't like certain groups over other groups. Obviously, it's not going to take long before the cry of "they're taking my job" starts to be said, because immigrant labor, one argument made for why we should have fewer immigrants is it drives down wages. That is one argument. Millions of men left their families in search of work. Women left in home countries took on increased responsibilities to raise the families. Think about this consequence. You're going for opportunity. And what you're leaving, again, how bad must it have been to leave your family behind? And not just to go to the next town, but you're leaving the country. You're crossing oceans, maybe. Because that's a better opportunity, even though it involves you leaving your family behind.
Like, do they with you once you're like rich enough, or
If you can afford it, yes, yeah. There's no way that a poor family, let's just say, whatever country this is, can afford to take the whole thing. Plus, plus it's easier for one guy to find a place to stay than a family. The poor who migrated to the U.S. were packed on ships, often settled in port cities like New York, Boston, San Francisco, Philly. No, sorry, it's also no. There you go. Too far. All right. Also remember too that typically that many people would be in there at once, unless they all work the same shift. That would be unfortunate. All right. These cities were crowded. They had bad sanitation systems, disease, crime were rampant, jobs paid poorly. We discussed this again. Is that new information to you? If it is, write it. If it's not, just put it, conditions were horrible. You know enough about through, here's an opportunity where film, where literature, where TV helps paint an accurate enough picture, especially because today the visual is much more accurate. Like that is what it looks like. And the only thing missing from TV and movies to make it perfect is if it was 4D. And you could smell it.
I think you will want to go then.
Usually one of those, a couple of 4D things.
Shrek 4D.
Huh? That's universal. The bugs thing, soaring is 4D. So you fly with an orange rose and you get orange in your face now and the waves in your face. Filler magic is 4D. The bug thing freaked out like rolling the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did the Lilo and Stitch one?
Wouldn't open.
I did that when I was like 5. It scared me so much.
A lot of stuff's closed for they're refurbishing, they're remodeling, and changing a lot. I'm going back when Tron opens up. All right. Migrants often created ethnic enclaves. That's a small group within a larger group. An enclave is a small area surrounded by a larger area. Chinatown, Little Italy, Hell's Kitchen is an actual place, not just a cooking show. That's the Irish part of New York City. But every city with any kind of immigrant population has this, just in different sizes. But they have it. My favorite restaurant when I was in college was the Shish Kebab House of Afghanistan. It was one little stretch of Southwest Asian, I didn't call it that then, and West Asian food. And it's just the best. There was like this little Italian place. It was this big, and it was deli and restaurant, and they made the best coffee gelato. It was all homemade. They made the gelato fresh. But it was like being in Italy. You walked in, it was like a wall of smoke. You had like 15 old Italians just smoking in the restaurant. But it was so good. It was worth the carcinogens. Okay. But again, the reason for this is because there were other migrants there. It's a support network. If nothing else, it's familiar. It's home without being home. That's the whole model for the McDonald's. A taste of home wherever you go. In the 1950s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it'd be worth going to McDonald's in other countries just because they serve local food.
Apparently, it's like a lot better.
Oh yeah, it is. I told you.
There's some more.
Well, it is healthy-ish. But like there's a curry boat in India, and you actually it's a bread bowl, and you eat the that looks so good. I love it. It's tension is sometimes ran high among different ethnic groups in the city slums. This is true. I told you the fire departments fought each other for jobs. In 1882, about 300,000 Chinese moved to California. 95% of them were men. And they were contract laborers working in gold mines and working on the railroads. The Chinese and the Irish built the Transcontinental Railroad. Not just, but in large numbers. The Irish coming from the east and the Chinese meeting them coming from. The Irishmen going west, the Chinese coming east. They meet at Promontory Point, Utah, behind the Golden Spike. It is then removed. They put in a regular spike It was just ceremony. Be too soft. I like trade. Chinese workers accepted lower wages than whites, fueling nativist sentiments among workers, and many opened business of their own. Again, if you can pay someone less, you will. That's just economics. Regardless of skin color or language they speak, if you want a job badly enough, you'll take a job. Yeah. Again, here's just a political cartoon. The Chinese must go. Working Man's Party of California. It's a political party. Some of get nativist parties. America First parties. The Know Nothing Party is a nativist party. The fact that we should not allow any more immigrants in, we should be Americans only. All right. 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act denied Chinese entry in the United States. The only ethnic group banned. They couldn't become citizens. They couldn't own property. Why? Why are they the only group banned? Maybe.
Because they're open.
The other groups didn't have as many.
Could be because there weren't 300,000 other groups. Could be the opium thing, but maybe. And it could be because they don't look like everybody else. And Italians and Irish and Germans look like everybody else.
They did ban Japanese people and Korean people. It's like,
Well, there weren't that many Korean people coming or Japanese people at that point. They start coming later because this law gets rescinded.
When?
Oh gosh, American 2, something I've never taught ever. I want to say maybe around Teddy. I don't know. Yes.
So within the same year that 300,000 Chinese people came over, they also made this act.
Well, sure, because of the fact that they're coming over. Yeah.
So was it part that they wanted diversity?
No, they wanted cheap labor. They started coming over for opportunity. Think of all the push and pull factors. Chinese started coming over because there's opportunity for work.
Yeah.
The mine owner, the railroad worker, the guy, they're like, okay, they'll work for this much money.
Yeah.
Hire them. Word gets out. More keep coming. The locals are like, wait, I can't work for that much money. This isn't fair. It's the locals complain to their politician complains to the senator, and things have changed. Yes.
Were the Chinese that already there kicked out, or were they allowed to stay?
Nobody was kicked out, just no more could come in, and they couldn't become a citizen in their own land. You can stay. I mean, it's still not China. Communist, nihilist, socialist, Hoodlums welcome, but no admittance to China. All right. Anybody know what a nihilist is? That's a good word. All right.
What is it?
Fenian? Fenian is someone who basically it's an Irish nationalist fighting to get England out of Ireland. Sort of like a Peaky Blinders kind of organization, almost the IRA kind of organization, not quite terrorist yet. All right. What? Oh, nice. The Japanese faced similar discrimination in the 19th century on the West Coast. Most worked as contract farm laborers. And then we all know what happened to them in World War II. Because they're all in cahoots, man. They're all out together. That's a joke. In case there's a parent walking around in another room in someone's house. All right. In the 1850s, 300,000 mostly Chinese migrants moved to New South Wales and Victoria, Australia, seeking gold. That's 300,000 more Chinese immigrants.
Do they really hate China? Like living in China that much, or like they want
It's just opportunity. It's just opportunity. You only know what you know. You don't know. I mean, I know it sounds trite and cliche. You don't know what you have until you don't have it. You don't know what's wrong with the world. I mean, when I was in the Navy, I was in boot camp. We had our Liberty weekend after boot camp was over, we went to Chicago. And I was in Chicago with a guy named Mike Wagenek. And Mike Wagenek had never seen a building taller than a silo his entire life. This is from Nebraska. And Chicago to him was stupefying. Absolutely, like the moving sidewalk in the airport, amazed. Like, and you take that for granted. Another guy, his last name, I can't remember his first name, his last name was Thibodeau. He was from the bayous in Louisiana. Boot camp was his first shoes. So you only know what you know. The people in Iowa and Kansas today who are so afraid of anything not like them, it isn't necessarily because they hate people, it's because that's all they know. There are kids in North Carolina who've never seen the mountains, never seen the ocean. Poor.
Yeah.
Poor.
It's 150 miles.
Okay, Ben, public transportation doesn't run that way. It's a Greyhound ticket. It's $80 there and back. It's a train. It's $150 there and back.
And even if
That's
you do
why.
that, what are you gonna get there and then?
So what are you gonna do?
Right back?
Like the people who stayed in New Orleans out of Katrina, they weren't all trying to ride it out. They had nowhere to go. There was nobody in another town where they could go. The people who left Katrina went to family, went to somebody they knew. And so we take standardized tests. You took standardized tests in the 4th grade, and we talked about name an experience you had. There was some question that talks about the ocean. You're supposed to. These kids can't visualize it because they've never seen it. We stopped doing field trips, going to Shoals and going to the aquarium in Wilmington or going to Old Salem. We can't do that now. So any experience they would have had, even those are taken from.
COVID or?
Yeah, overnight stuff went away, and then COVID's killed everything.
Oh, so is that like a permanent thing now?
I hope not.
Okay. Well, say.
Tension between white and Chinese miners led to a white Australia party. Yet another reason why my shirt won't say wow. Restricting Chinese immigration. You were going to have a WAP t-shirt. Then the song came out. And Mary thankfully brought my attention to it this past summer because that would have been most uncomfortable. All right. We quite sympathize with the determination of these colonies that there should not be an influx of people alien in civilization, alien in religion, alien in customs, whose influx, moreover, would seriously interfere with the legitimate rights of the existing laboring population.
Nobody wants the Chinese. Everybody's banning them. That's still pretty long time.
That's 50 years ago.
That's here.
I mean, that's it. And Australia has a very rugged, rough, chauvinistic history and persona about it. Made the men are men, and sheep are nervous, that kind of thing. All right. In the late 1800s, about 60,000 Pacific Islanders were forced to migrate to work as indentured servants on sugar plantation in Queensland, Australia. Forced to work. I don't know why. That's the first I've ever heard of that. Unless they wanted them off the island, unless they wanted the land they were living in for some other purpose. I don't know. I'm not going to make it up. And finally, by 1901, the Pacific Island Laborers Act banned using Pacific Islanders as forced labor in Australia and actually helped return some to their homelands. So they were treated better than the Chinese. Yep. Relatively speaking. Pacific Island labor includes all natives not of European extraction of any island except the island of New Zealand, situated in the Pacific Ocean beyond the Commonwealth. So it had to be off the continent. No Pacific Island laborer shall enter Australia on or after the 31st day of March, 1904. The minister may order Pacific Island laborer found in Australia after the 31st day of December, 1906 to be deported from Australia, and thereupon shall be deported accordingly. So they had 2 years to leave, 5 years to leave. So I guess they weren't really treated better than that. It's just the law ended and was worded differently. Basically, if you were a Pacific Islander or a non-Australian or someone from the continent of Asia, leave. Now I'm curious as to what it looks like. And it's amazing how different New Zealand is. Like just philosophically and fundamentally, and they're not that far apart. Culture is fascinating. All right. You finished with unit 6. Well done. After him. So tomorrow I will post the Meiji Japanese King Dynasty tonight. Tomorrow we'll begin Unit 7, which is we're gonna look at the causes of World War I. So excited! I wish I could do the whole war, but I can't. Saturday over the weekend, gentlemen and ladies, hold on one second, please. There are other classes, gentlemen and ladies. Hold on. The test opens Friday at 4, closes Monday at 9. The World War I notes are going to be posted over the weekend. That's Unit 7. Don't worry about it. The notes that stopped today and the Japanese stuff I post tonight is it for Unit 6. The Unit 7 KCI will go live Monday. I had to just divide it. I found something that covers Unit 7, 8, and 9. Also, I'm going to spend a little time tomorrow talking about the shower curtain / Google site thing. And that's it. So enjoy the rest of your day. Go outside. It is GEO Orgis. If you have any questions, I'll be here. We'll be here. Look at the remind. Tell me what you think. Thank you all for coming early. What time is it? Yeah. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Well, I always say goodbye and then I stop recording.